Today we jump back into pant making, and it's very practical today because it's all about how to correct issues you find when the pattern you've chosen to make pants with has a different crotch length to your body. How we're going to fix this, we're going to see a lot of things, so keep watching.
Time flashed by and I woke up on the other side of the moon.
Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome back to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing. And this is episode 4 of Let's Sew Easy Pants, a mini series I've been running on the channel for a little while now. Episode 1 was about 5 pattern recommendations, easy styles that you can try for the first time if you haven't taken the leap into pant making. Episode 2 was about suitable fabrics that could work really well with these styles. Episode 3, which was the last one, was about how to measure your body, take all those interesting measurements, and how to translate those into a pattern that you've chosen and compare. And this one is super practical. I have 3 muslins to show you, 3 types of pants I've sewn for myself with different issues, and we're going to see how we can correct when the crotch length of your pattern doesn't match your body, whether you have too much length or you don't have enough length and you need to add. We're going to be looking at those 2 types of scenarios. If you haven't watched episode 3, please watch that one before you watch this video because there are things that you might not understand. I will be talking about the names of some measurements that you take when you measure yourself for pants. And if you're not familiar with them, you might think I'm speaking in a whole different language. So please watch that one first. It's just that what I say today might not make that much sense to you. So please go and watch that one. Now I have chosen a pant pattern to sew, easy pull-on style with an elasticated waistband. And I'm not going to actually tell you what pattern it is because I don't want to influence you in any way in what you might think about this pattern, because everything I'm doing is to adjust it to my body, and my body is not your body. You know, we all have different types of adjustments that we need to make. Just take it as a generic pull-on pant with a 5/8 seam allowance that is going to be super easy to work with to show you how to do these adjustments. Now, I just want to say that I don't have all the truth about pattern making. You will find diverse type of advice around these topics, and whatever you firmly believe in, you will probably find someone out there confirming that for you. Whatever type of adjustment you think that you need to make and how, you will probably see someone doing it the way that you think is best. Just planning this series has been super motivating for myself and has also helped me grow and study even more. I am not an expert, but I try to bring you advice that will really work and that makes logical sense. You will find lots of fitting guides, books, websites, blog posts, videos telling you how to do things in a lot of different ways. So you can take what I'm going to show you as another way that you can try and maybe see if you like. My brain works in a sort of 3D, 4D dimension in my brain. So when I see these adjustments, I actually see them happening in my brain and they just make sense to me, of course. So I chose my pant pattern, made my size according to my hip circumference as the pattern suggested, chose it, made absolutely no adjustments to it. And if you have seen the previous video, you know that I did find length differences between my body and the pattern. My crotch length is longer than the one of the pattern, and I knew that was going to be the case. And for you, I did sew it just as is, so you can see the issues that would have arisen if I hadn't of taken the measurements and just gone straight in and made this pattern with my nice fabric, which I don't want to do. Muslin fabric, actually here I don't find that type of cotton, so I just bought this curtain type material, pretty ugly. And what I can say about a muslin, just make it full length, don't add the pockets, don't finish seams. Make sure that when you cut your pattern pieces, the grain line is actually on the grain line of the fabric, so you don't have twisted legs that you might confuse with fitting issues that aren't. It's just because you didn't place it on the fabric correctly. I'm sewing the inseam of the muslin. I'm using a contrast color. This is bright blue, that's white, so I can actually see what I'm doing. I'm using a 4.5 stitch length, so you can really see what I'm doing. And then if I need to make some more changes onto the same muslin, do tiny little adjustments, I'm going to use this bright yellow, and that is going to signify that that is what is going to fit me better, and then I can transfer those little tiny changes onto the pattern piece once I've figured out what I need to change. So I'm using white for the original lines and then yellow for the corrections. And you know, hopefully your pattern has 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, because that's a really nice amount of seam allowance for pants. If your pattern has 1 centimeter or 3/8, maybe you can cut, when you're cutting your pattern, just cut it 1/4 of an inch wider everywhere, and then you're gonna have 5/8 seam allowance, which gives you some wiggle room to make some adjustments. And always add a waistband. Add on your waistband, fold it, but don't like serge it or finish the whole edge of the waistband, because you might want to take the elastic out to tighten it or loosen it, that sort of thing. The waistband does bring the pants up to where they're going to be. You need to have the waistband there for you to assess this properly. You can't skip the waistband. Although they are a pain, they need to be there for the muslin. This green here is the muslin I made straight out of the printer. Basically, I did remove the elastic by now because I've been like using the same elastic for these muslins. So that's why you don't see it there. So by measuring my body and measuring the pattern, I knew I was gonna have issues in the crotch length, both front and back. I knew what those numbers were. I made a little table. I had all the information there. I just wanted to live the experience of wearing this pair of pants that was short in the front, short in the back, so that I could feel how uncomfortable it was and I could show it to you. Now, why can't pant patterns just be made to fit you? Why can't you just print a pattern or buy a paper pattern, cut it out, choose a size, make it, and fit you perfect? It might happen for a few of you, a very fortunate few of you, and it has happened to me maybe once or twice in the past. But usually you will find lots of differences. You know, we have different heights. Our body height does influence in the size and shape of our pelvis as well. Being women, there are 2 main types of pelvic shapes. And I know this from my midwifery type of experience. You know, there's some pelvises that are wider, some are sort of more narrow and taller. And, you know, it just depends on the way that you stand, on your posture, whether you have a history of athleticism, you know, if you have more muscle on the back or not, your age, so many things. So you need to expect to be making changes to pant patterns. It is unreasonable to expect a pattern to fit you and then say, oh, the pattern was terrible, it was drafted terribly, that sort of thing, because it doesn't fit you on your body like the way that you want to. So it's really important to make a muslin. And if I wasn't sharing all this with you, I would not have made this first muslin knowing it was going to be short all over, because I know, I measured myself, I measured the pattern. I would have adjusted the lengths to the pattern first and then made a muslin to have the feel and make minor tweaks. But knowing I needed so much more extra everywhere, I wouldn't have made this. But I made it for you so that you can see how terrible it fits. Unsightly images coming up. I've made these pants just as per the pattern, choosing my size based on my hip circumference, and up to here my hip circumference is okay. If I stand sideways, you can see that the side seam is hanging quite straight down to the floor. It's not pulling to the front or to the back. I do feel I can move, you know. Up to there, all good, but just get ready to see the ugly things. I knew that my front was going to be short from measuring the pattern and measuring myself. I also knew that the back was going to be short from measuring myself and the pattern, but I went ahead and made it so you can see. First of all, this is not hitting where I want it to be. My belly button is there and I would like covered. And actually, because there's an elastic here, this is going to hike up and travel up to a smaller area of me anyway. When that happens, look at these lines here, indicating that it's just short. From there to there is my depth, right? And I was already short in the depth and the length that includes the curve. It's just so uncomfortable. I feel that the inseam is pulling up and you can surely see that at the back. This seam here is not long enough for my bottom curve and it's separating the buttocks. Not a good look, very uncomfortable. And if I went ahead and sat down with these, this would go down and probably show my undies. If you look at the back, it's not tight. I have the correct circumference. It's just the length here is not enough and it's creating that separation, which is horrible. Now, before I show you how I'm going to correct these issues, for pants, I want to show you ways I am not going to do it because I think it's important. I think maybe some of you who have some experience with making pants might jump into conclusions while you're watching and think, why isn't this being done, or why is this other thing not being done? And it's two things that can apply for both when you have excess length or shortage of length. It's just inverse, but it's basically the same thing that I'm not going to be doing. So have a look at that. Before I show you how I'm going to correct the front and back crotch lengths to match my body, because you've just seen the muslin, they were both short and I knew that beforehand because I'd measured myself and the pattern. The following adjustments to add to the crotch length don't give the best results, and that's why I'm going to mention them to you, and in an effort to explain why I'm not doing that as well and why I'm doing something different. So you can see a line going across at the hip. It's a bit further up than the hip notch. I usually like it about an inch higher so that it doesn't affect the shape of this curve here on the front and the back. That's where you can see it there. And it's perpendicular to the grain line, meaning there's a 90-degree angle there. Well, that is what I'm going to use to adjust. Sometimes it's tempting to add to the inseam here. So you would add, let's say, 1/2 inch there, tapering to nothing above the knee notch usually. That would give you 1/2 inch there. And then you might be tempted to add, I don't know, 1/2 inch here from the top as well. In theory, this could make sense. I've added 1/2 there, I've added 1/2 there, I've added 1 inch total here. But it doesn't really fix the problem, because adding to the inseam will add to the area of your thighs. So if you have fuller thighs and you feel tightness in the thighs, that will be evidenced by drag lines going up like this towards the middle and pulling. That is when you add to the inseam. But if you just need total length in general, that adjustment is not going to work. If you add to the top, it's going to deform the shape of the waist and it's going to create a V in the center, which is not good either. This is why I'm not doing these types of adjustments to deal with a discrepancy in the crotch length from the body to the pattern and to make it match. I'm going to do something different. Now on the back, the same. If you added to this crotch curve extension here, tapering to nothing before the knee notch, you will also not be solving the problem of total length as it should be, because you're just adding to the thighs. So this is an adjustment you do if you have evidence of needing an adjustment on the thighs. You will have drag lines pointing right to the inseam here on your pants. And same, adding to the top here, you can see that the shape is already curved up slightly. If you just added to that, you're going to end up with a V. When you sew on the other back, you're going to have this shape like a V like that. It's not going to fit you properly. So the adjustments need to be made differently using these lines, and I'm going to show you that next. I made my first original muslin. I did not have issues with the fit on my upper thigh, the space between my legs, in the crotch extension. That fit perfectly. The issues were mainly on the total length, up further above my pubic bone, between my waist and the curve. That's where the lack of length was. So adding extra to the inseam or removing if you have too much length, that taking away from that area is only going to make the space between your legs shorter or longer, but it's not going to fix the length up above. So that's why that is not an approach that I'm willing to take. Same as taking or adding away from the top, at the waist. Just deforms the pattern. I wouldn't go there, although I have done it once in the past with the Pietra pants. I did remove from the whole amount on the top, and that's because I had pants that I had already made, so there wasn't really different types of adjustments I could make. But if I'm planning a pair of pants from scratch, I'm going to do the effort to do the adjustment in the best way that I can. And I'm going to show you now how I'm going to add all this length that I'm missing. I'm going to be showing you this table that you're seeing on screen right now, and maybe take a screenshot of this table, make it for yourself, divide it into measurements for front and back and total, write what the pattern measures, what your body measures, what the difference between them is, how much ease you want to add, how much you actually have to add to the pattern, and how much length you're going to have finished, completed on the pattern piece. Now, having all these numbers in this little table was super helpful for what I'm going to show you now. There are these little red circles that are going to be popping up on screen to highlight different measurements, so it's not that confusing. Try to follow it slowly, have a bit of patience. You know, these topics are a bit dense. It's not like talking about flowers or a pretty dress. It is a little bit more dense, but super, super practical and important if you want to improve the fit of your pants. So let's hop into there. This demonstration, the waistband is not there. These are just the pattern pieces, but I will talk about the total lengths there and just pretend there's a waistband included. You can see the red outline on these little pants is red, so that's symbolizing the seam allowance. So my front length here was 12.25 inches and the length of the pants was 12. So I was basically missing 1/4 inch here. When I measured my depth with that fake L ruler and I placed it there like that, it also showed that I was missing 1/4 inch. If I were to add just the 1/4 inch I'm missing here on the front, that wouldn't leave any ease. Remember I mentioned you needed ease in these two measurements. You know, anywhere from 3/4 inch to 1 inch for these style of pants, and I'm gonna go with 3/4 inch ease on the length. Now, some people say you can divide that into half, put half in the front, half in the back. In my case, I know I like the front to be more fitted, not fitted, but I don't really want that much extra length. So that 3/4 inch of ease I want to add to these. I'm gonna add 1/4 here, and I'm gonna add 1/2 inch there. So let's fix this. I know I need to add 1/4 inch that I'm missing anyway, plus I'm gonna add 1/4 inch of ease. That means I'm gonna add 1/2 inch, and I have drawn a line here just above the hip notch that you'll probably see on pants, and you can see that the grain line is there marked all the way up to the top, and this hip line has to be perpendicular. That means that right there you're going to see a 90-degree angle there. So I've drawn the line straight across, and that is where I'm going to cut. Now I cut straight across because I want to increase the length of the side seam, and it's got to do with what I'm going to do in the back. Okay, so I've cut across there, spread it out, filled it in with another color so that you can see it, and this is symbolizing the 1/2 inch that I want to add. The 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch is what I was missing for my body measurements, and the other 1/4 inch is for the ease that I want to add. So that is my front done there. I'm going to repeat. This line here has been cut and spread apart. I have added 1/2 inch there from side seam to the center front seam, and that 1/2 inch is composed of 1/4 inch that I was missing from my front crotch length measurements from my body, and the other 1/4 inch is the ease that I'm adding into the front so that it's not excessively tight. These are not jeans, so you do need some ease. That's what I've done there. Now at the back I have the same hip line going across, same perpendicular to the grain line there. There's a 90-degree angle here, and because I've added 1/2 inch there, that has affected the side seam there, and so I'm going to do the same adjustment here. And on the back it's going to be a partial adjustment, because then I'm going to do another line to add more length, because obviously I need to add more than 1/2 inch. Okay, so you can see there that I've added also 1/2 inch to the depth at the back. That at the same time adds 1/2 inch to the length there, but I'm missing more than that. Originally the pattern measured, including the waistband, 16.5 inches. Now that I've added this, it measures 17. My body measures 17.5 and I want half an inch of ease on the back. I need mine to measure 18. So I need my total length to be 18, and at the moment I have 17, which means I still need to add an inch. And to add an inch more, I'm going to cut across here where I added this length and pivot and open just at the center back. Now this slash line is done same on this line here from the hip, from the center back, but not all the way across. You stop at the seam line. You can see I've stopped right there at the seam line, and here from this little bit you need to cut a tiny amount so that it can pivot there. I've cut from the side there, so you don't cut through to the edge, you leave a hinge point there at the seam line. And now this is where I'm going to open up to get the inch that I need. Now when you're trimming this out, you're just going to make sure that the curve is smooth there. Now if you notice, this grain line there has been skewed slightly off to the side there because of this hinge, but it's not that much. I personally wouldn't be happy slashing this up and opening it up more than what I've done, an inch. That little bit of distortion there won't affect much, but if you're wanting to add way more, I suggest doing this partial method here, because I would have needed to add 1.5 inches here, which is too much to add with this method that opens up and hinges from there. That's why I took into account that I needed half an inch there, made the adjustment so that the side seams match completely there, and the extra that I needed on the back is only added to this length right there. Here you're seeing the top part of the back, and I've continued my grain line there with the red, the new grain line mark, and you can see the original one where it was, and how by raising it from the center back it sort of shifted like that a little bit, but it's not excessive, it's not that much. Had I hinged from there and opened more, this would be super deformed right there, and I'm not happy with that. That's why I used what I needed to add from the front to add it this way. So these are going to match there on the sides. I'm still getting the total length that I need here, which includes half an inch of ease at the back, 1/4 inch of ease there, and that totals 3/4 inch of ease at the crotch length that I would prefer for these pants. Now that you've seen the corrections made on these tiny pants, I'm going to show you how it looks like on the real pant, so you can see and confirm that the measurements I'm taking are exactly what is on there. Here you are looking at the actual pattern piece for these pants that I've just shown you the miniature of, and I just want to confirm the measurements with you. This is the front. You can see where I've added half an inch extra there, and here it says that I needed 1/4 inch to complete the length, including the waistband there. So originally the pattern measured 12 inches there. I needed 12 1/4 inches, and I want 1/4 inch of ease. That's why I've added half an inch, because 1/4 plus 1/4 equals half. This measures 12.5 inches now. My body measures 12 1/4, so I have 1/4 inch of ease on the front crotch length, which is not much ease. I don't want more ease than that. I think it's okay. I want 3/4 of ease in total on the crotch length, the entire one, including the front and the back. And I've designated 1/4 inch of ease for the front, and I'm gonna leave half an inch of ease for the back. Okay, when I measure from the top of the waistband along the stitch line at the seam allowance that I've marked 5/8, and I measure along, This is now measuring 12.5 inches there at that intersection there with the inseam. That's good, that's what I wanted. I wanted my total length to be 12.5 inches. My body is 12.25 inches, and that gives me 1/4 inch of ease at the front. Okay, this is the back now. The waistband there has been pinned, and you can see where I've added the 1/2 inch there. That is going to match the side seams of the front there, 1/2 inch there, and then where I pivoted there at the seam line, right there at the seam allowance, and then opened only at the center back 1 inch. So I've added 1.5 inches extra here on the center back, but over there on the side seam I've only added 1/2 inch, which is to match what I've done at the front. When I measure from the top of the waistband at the stitch line, this should measure 18 inches. My body is 17.5 inches, and that would give me 1/2 inch of ease at the back. So measuring again, and exactly 18 inches right there, the dot. This is slightly longer than my body now. The original pattern would have been very short for me. Now I can go ahead and make a muslin and see how it's going to improve the fit. After doing all those adjustments I knew I had to make, I went ahead and made another muslin. Now I bought like 6 or 7 meters of this stuff, so I had plenty to play with. This is the other pair. It's got the waistband on, it's got an elastic, 5/8 seam allowance sewn with white thread, so I can see, you can see that there I have left an opening to pull the elastic in and out. I'm super happy with these, you know, the length adjustments, the amount of ease I wanted to add, I'm very happy with. So let's see how this one fits. This is how my muslin fits after doing the adjustments that you just made. You can see that my waistband is right where I want it to be, about 1/2 inch above my belly button, so you can't see my belly button's covered, and this is where I find it comfortable. My natural waist is further up because my waist is quite short, you know, I have a short torso, so this is what's comfortable for me. This is really stiff fabric, but I don't see any excess or weird bunching up or like special drag lines here on the front. It looks pretty good for what I want. The side seam is hanging pretty straight. There's no pulling of the seam forward or backwards, so you know the circumference around the hips is okay. At the back, it's up here where I want it to be. When I sit down, it's not going to go down further, and the length is fine. There are some mild wrinkles here, but these are not tight pants. Here's a closer look at the front. The curve there is okay. After having this one done and corrected, I would be 100% happy to go and get my linen fabric that I want to use for my final pair, because I know that I'm going to be comfortable, everything's going to fit nicely. I have 3/4 inch of ease around the crotch length in total, which is an amount I find appropriate. 3/4 to 1 inch is good for these types of pants, and I'm very happy I went to all these lengths because this fits really well. I know everyone is not as tall as me or has a longer pelvis type thing situation going on, and there are many people that try a pattern and find that they have excess length. There's lots of little tattletale signs that means that your lengths are not matching those of the pattern. And now if you had measured yourself really accurately and measured your pattern, you would have sort of seen what differences they were. But if you haven't done that and you just made a pair of pants and put them on and they hang really low, it doesn't look very good, it's not comfortable, and you're going to have lots of vertical lines and folds. It's just not a good look either. So I want to show you also the opposite of what I've done to mine, because I need to add. I want to show you what to do when you need to take away. And I've made this other one where I have simulated length issues but with excess. So this one's different, it has a green waistband, and you're going to see what I'm going to do with this, you know, on camera to get a better fit. Okay, these pants now are too long on the rise above my belly button, so that's good there, but down here they're just really long. Look at this, look at all that excess. At the back, this is where it's supposed to be, but it's also long and there's just excess there that is solved by pulling them up a little bit maybe. So there's just generally too much ease. Now at the front, it's good here. I just need to remove from this area there. So I'm gonna find So I'm gonna find a middle place there and just take away the excess that I can feel. So I want to remove maybe about 5/8 of an inch. So I'm folding away a little dot from the center, and this will probably just taper off to nothing there on the side. I can feel this is much better now when I took it away from there and then tapered it off to nothing there on the side. Okay, this is really hard to do by yourself, but I've pinned on the middle there about the same amount I pinned on the front, and I think that improves the fit there. I don't have those like vertical drag lines there, and I feel that it hits where it's supposed to be on the top by removing it from there. So in this case, I would remove from the center front and the center back and just taper to nothing there, and it would leave the original side seam the same. If this was excessively longer and it was just long all the way up to here, I would consider removing from all the way around, including the side seam there. I'm going to show you how to adjust it both ways. It just depends on how it's fitting on your body. So, you know, I'm working by myself, filming with a little thing. I can't really see what I'm doing. So that little dot I pinned was a bit crooked, you know. This is much easier when someone is helping you, but that is not always possible. In my case, impossible. I have absolutely no one that will know how to do this on me. The most important thing is determining how much you want to take away, you know, between your waist and the crotch at the bottom. You know, find the middle space there. It's usually around the hip area, a little bit above sometimes. Here we have another pair of fresh pants, little ones. I'm going to show you the opposite now of what I've done before. That was to add to the crotch length front and back, because that's what my body needed. But in your body, you might find that the pattern is too long in the front or too long in the back, or just one or the other. Whatever you find on your muslin on your body, you might find that there's excess length where you don't want it to be. As you've just seen, I sort of pinned the excess away in a dot from the center front and then going off to the side seams, whether that includes the whole front and back on the side seams as well, or just the center front and the center back tapering to nothing here. Just depends on how much you need and how it's fitting on your body. Cut this the same as I did when I wanted to add length. If you think you need a pretty equal amount in the front and the back, I would just cut all the way through like I've done there, and then overlap the excess away. So if you needed to remove 1/2 inch, I would overlap that 1/2 inch, keeping the grain line mark there. If you took away 1/2 inch from the front, from the whole area, from side seam to center front seam, you will need to do the same with the back and have that overlap of 1/2 inch there on the side seam. But you might want to remove more from the center. So you can leave that there as a hinge point there, overlapping that 1/2 inch, and then you can overlap it more like that, or the same amount. It just depends on how much you like. Usually the back needs more adjusting for some people, and you might want to remove more than the 1/2 inch that you removed from the side seams to match what you've done at the front. So I've just shown you where I've cut all the way across. Now if you just want to modify the center front for your body, depending on what you removed from your muslin as a dart, you might have just needed to remove from the center front, tapering to nothing at the side seam. So you would cut up to the seam line there, and then from the side seam up to there as well, leaving a tiny little hinge. Here is where you can take away there and overlap there at the center front. Just the tiny amount that you need, that is going to be the same as the dart that you removed on your body with your muslin. Figure out how much that dart depth was there and overlap that same amount there. There might be some jaggedness there on the curve that you just need to smooth out nicely. Just blend it in and correct the seam allowance if it went too wonky. And you do the same for the back. If your back was just too long, you had bagginess here, folds, you could just overlap that there, the amount that you need. Now when you do these adjustments where you hinge and leave the side seams the same, it does modify the original grain line mark that you had on the pattern. When you correct this grain line on your pattern, it goes further out towards the side seam. And that's the opposite of what happens when you use the same hinge to open up and add. You saw me do that before when I added like that, and then you can see that the grain line, the new grain line mark that you correct, will go towards the center. See? So when you add, the grain line goes towards the center. When you take away, it goes off to the side. That's why I don't think more than an inch of adding or taking away is appropriate, because it's going to skew up the top part of the pants. It's just going to become super deformed. You know, if you need to remove more than an inch, I would do a method that's mixed, like what I did to add, which is adding completely the whole way through, front and back, and then doing a smaller type wedge hinge fix so it doesn't skew the grain line that much. Now I know this video is super intensive, the same as the other one was. It is not light, entertaining sewing. I know it's different, but you know, if you want to be serious about your pants fitting, you are probably going to see the value in a video like this, where I'm not showing you any pretty makes. I'm actually showing you not so pretty makes, because these pants, you know, there's two of them that don't fit very well. But I'm going to leave it here for now, and in the next video, episode 5, we'll have everything to do with the shapes of these curves. So I mentioned before that the shape of the crotch, both front and back, so it's not a measurement as such, it's a type of shape, whether it's more shallow or more scooped, and the way those shapes can influence the fit in relation to your body. So we're going to be seeing about that, to scoop or not to scoop, and how much and where. And also I'm going to touch on the topic of thigh adjustments. I know a lot of people have a thigh volume that doesn't actually match what the pattern is drafted for sometimes. So people have fuller thighs or thinner thighs will see certain drag lines and fit issues that really don't look great either, and also have a solution. So I'm going to be looking at those in the next one. Please catch up on this series. If you haven't seen all the videos in this mini series, you can always catch up. There is a playlist listed down below in the description box, and I hope from the bottom of my heart this is helping you and you find the value in this series. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon with more sewing. Bye!
Ooh.